So monogamy, according to Esther Perel in Mating in Captivity, it is the sacred cow of the romantic ideal, for it is the marker of our specialness. I have been chosen and others renounced. When you turn your back on other loves, you confirm my uniqueness.
The first thing that I was grateful for, that somebody wanted to marry me.
So it's in a sense a confirmation of one's own uniqueness in the reflection of their partner. So why is this important to Western culture? Why is this important to a woman? Why is this important to a man? It's because from the lens of heteronormative, when I use the term heteronormative, I'm referring to the cultural discourse of heterosexual relationships. So there was research conducted, 61% of those researched were women. It was 246 individuals, college-age individuals between the age of 18 and 47, where they researched the impact of the violation of fidelity on a person's emotional well-being. Fidelity is presumed. Fidelity is a value that is presumed in women and also in men in modern day society. Fidelity is expected.
And I trust her, which is a huge element. I mean, when we finally did decide to get together permanently, we were both in our later 20s. And, you know, one of the things that I had learned by that point and insisted to her about was that we had to tell each other the truth. And she took to that wholeheartedly.
So if I interact with you as an adult wanting to pair with you, I am expecting for you to be faithful, whether it be tacit or explicit. That is an expectation. That's a fundamental expectation. And if infidelity happens to violate that relationship, that structure, it's reported that it could create emotional imbalance. It could create emotional issues. It's also been reported if infidelity was perceived as acceptable to the individuals close to those that were researched, the weaker the importance of fidelity was for that individual. And then vice versa. One of the things that is articulated or expressed with the pursuit of finding a mate, finding a husband, or marketing oneself for a husband is withholding sex, withholding the act of having sex with your partner until the deal is made. So she talks about the deal, and it's so interesting because Esther Perel speaks about this. I believe she said sexuality is the property of the self. And what I would like to add to that is that if sexuality is the property of the self, that means really what monogamy means within the truest sense of the word. A man is essentially relenting his property of the self, like his sexual property, like his body, the way he carries his body, his desires, his fantasies. He's relenting and assigning his desires, his fantasies, the property of the self, his sexuality to that woman. He's saying that, like the contract that women expect men in modern society to enter into, I have a willingness to call it or bring it to conjugal property. And so if sex is the conjugal union, sex is the reason why a person says, okay, I'm committing to this person for the rest of my life. That means I'm giving myself the right to say this property of the self becomes a conjugal property. And that conjugal property is now thereby virtuous. And so basically it's an agreement that is morally being signed over, like the deed is being signed over to that other, and it's giving that other that making that other the one permitted to fulfill the element of the self, like that element of the self, that sexual element of the self. I'm going to also show you some footage from John Gray. And in this footage, it's going to be able to kind of weave in some of the things that I'm talking about.
Men's commitment issues are very different from women's. And men go, I don't have a commitment issue, I just lost interest. And but they do lose interest. But part of their losing interest is that
Men,
when they have sex without a relationship, without intimacy, then for men, from sex, the brain chemical dopamine becomes so intense that he now experiences this huge pleasure in his brain, and it's associated with the dopamine. This is what cocaine does, produces huge amounts of dopamine. Sex produces huge amounts of dopamine. When you have an intimate relationship, you've got serotonin. Serotonin balances dopamine. So when your serotonin levels go up, your dopamine levels don't go as high. But let's say you're a man who is typically low in dopamine, then you're looking for something to pump it up. Drugs will pump it up. Alcoholism is just pumping up dopamine. Cocaine is pumping up dopamine. And promiscuous sex. That means sex without intimacy will pump up dopamine really high because there's no serotonin to balance it off.
so in that clip, he expresses perfectly how dopamine is something that is stimulated during sex for a man, and it's in no way creating that intimacy bond. John Gray talks about how oxytocin plays a role in the sexual relationship between man and woman, how oxytocin
is the bonding hormone. Friendships, nurturing stimulates oxytocin. For women, not men, oxytocin is what lowers stress in their body. Oxytocin is what keeps them happy. And the irony is, even if she doesn't climax, if he climaxes, which he always will, it will pump them up. So just him inside of her will push up these hormones. She bonds with him, and this guy might not even care about her, might not call her back, might not be interested in her, but her body's saying, must have oxytocin, must have him.
but he's in no way addicted to the relationship. Sex and making love are two different things. There's serotonin. When a man gets bonded with a woman, serotonin is present. And when he has enough dopamine, where both of those things are balanced out, he has the right to actually say, I believe that I can have a relationship with you for the rest of my life. That's something that a woman in the dating world has to look into. She has to say, am I able to make a commitment to myself, to actually have a vow to myself, even though part of me says, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, let's just have sex, not 90 days. Come on. Oh, how about a month? How about 6 weeks? Okay, 6 weeks. 6 weeks is a long time. How about 6 weeks? 90 days, that's a long, but what happens if they run away? See, those are like irrational thoughts within the framework of myths and rituals. Like also in the book, The Second Sex, she talks about the Sphinx and the Virgin. And the Sphinx is the man's fantasy. She excites him. She enchants him. However, so she straddles between the pure and the profane. And if she deviates from the pure while she's still exciting him before a commitment, then what she's actually doing is she's creating a bomb almost that actually diffuses his desire for her. Because
I think as soon as sex is introduced, everything changes, and most importantly, expectations. I don't do to none of us do to our friends what we would do to a lover.
Right, and those expectations change from the woman. Now let's be real about that.
They do.
Not for the man, because the man will still be in friend zone, in his head.
That's true.
He's doing additional stuff.
That's true. Okay, but then why does the man sleep with the woman if they just want to be friends?
Because it's good.
why would a woman want to wound herself in that way when she can just withhold, according to Pat Allen, until a deal is made?
I need to feel safe before entering into a sexual relationship with you. I need to know your plans for us and that you're not sleeping with anyone else.
I don't understand.
Let me finish. And that there's a future that could possibly lead to marriage.
What?
I'm ready for a committed relationship, and I need to know your thoughts.
In that segment, you saw that she was saying, I need to know your thoughts. Never your feelings. I need to know your thoughts. So you're asked to talk from feelings, or she's asked to revere his thoughts. And so in some ways, I see that as a very healthy way for a woman to exercise her right to have corporal jurisdiction over her body that says, I'm interviewing you, and before I commit to actually giving my jurisdiction of my body over to you, I need to know your intentions. However, the new generation is going through a process of where do we fit in with this, because that's too old school, this is too fast. Where the matters of the heart are concerned, it's still showing the same thing, a deep freeze with commitment.
It's not working. I gave Graham the exam 4 weeks ago and he hasn't called. I'm going crazy. I called and apologized.
Oh, apologized? For saying no to casual sex?
Don't tell me I blew it.
He's evaluating the loss of you. By calling, you give him a voice fix. If you don't hear from him in 8 weeks, move on. Oh, you'll live through it. Are you duty dating?
I don't feel like it.
It is important for you to keep yourself out there. Think of Scarlett O'Hara at the picnic. Attract as many beaux as possible.
It's awful. I watch the clock counting the seconds till it's over.
And his touch make your skin crawl.
I wish he'd choke on a bone or drown in his soup.
But if you want to get married, you must make yourself do it.
Also, as like they are negotiating like the deal from the 5-second stare to the mating ritual, to the dating, to the sacred and the profane, or the pure and the profane, the virgin and the sphinx, to the I will withhold sex until I need to know that you're not sleeping with anybody. I need to know that you are interested in what I'm interested in, which is moving towards longevity and commitment.
You must practice.
What if he doesn't call back?
That's why you must duty date. Builds your skill, keeps you from obsessing. So, go out there and bring back 3 examples, okay?
And so that's the part of the story, though. It gets kind of convoluted. The story gets convoluted because what's the deal?
What do you feel like seeing?
Something light, not too dramatic.
Attack of the Killer Bees. Yep.
Clarice?
Graham, how was your game?
Where you been?
Dinner. Is there a problem?
Graham, this is Sheridan. We work together. Sheridan, this is Graham.
We sleep together. Clarice! Hey! Now, why haven't you returned my calls? Is this some kind of game with you? How many others are there?
There's no need to get upset. I'm upholding our contract.
Oh, yeah?
I'm not having sex with anyone else.
You expect me to believe that?
Yes.
So let me get this straight. You think it's okay to date other people if we don't have sex with them?
Yes.
That's insane. I don't want you dating anyone else.
Fine. I'll stop when I have an engagement ring on my hand.
I'll tell you right now, I am not discussing the M word.
Like how does one, if someone says, well, you're entering into a contract with another person, okay, if I'm entering into a contract with this person, then I want to make sure that I'm entering into the contract with the person that I really am. And what's the reason why performative acts are things that actually are getting more value than authenticity? If somebody wants to walk around looking a hot mess outdoors and being their 100% self, that comes at a price culturally in the Western culture, especially for a single woman, based on relationship therapist, relationship coach, Pat Allen, and others that promote these rituals and these scripts that say, if you want love, do this. And like pre-commitment sex is taught to be prohibited. Like it's in Western culture, especially from the Christian vantage point, it's taught to be prohibited, especially if you want to secure a relationship that leads to marriage. However, there are shifts that are happening in the younger generation. According to Esther Perel, in one of the cases in her book, Mating in Captivity, she talks about Ratu. And Ratu is a 22-year-old college student who shares her tales of the hookup culture. Basically, they deem it the booty call. She talks about how they get drunk, and after a party, they get drunk after a party, and they're friends with their friend, their male friend, they hook up, they have sex. The next morning, they pretend like it never happened. Then they get drunk again, and then they pretend like it never happened. But then eventually they stop getting drunk, but they just start going to each other for the booty call. But nobody talks about commitment. And she also talks about how she would rather engage with risky sex than to succumb to the risks of the matters of the heart. Like that's very telling. It's very telling about how sex has become like this tool in this new generation. However,
so the great insight for teenage girls as well as for women is when you're going to have sex with somebody, make sure that you're already happy and you're not needing them to make you happy. So you've got that sense of foundation to be happy. The next thing is that if you're going to have sex with someone, make sure it's somebody that loves you, because it hurts a lot. It's not just emotional hurt. It's somebody punches you in the stomach, and it's a wound when you open yourself up and bond with somebody who's not there.
It can even be depicted like with Ratu as this example. Like Ratu is too afraid to ask for commitment, but she's willing to commit the most sacred part of herself, her body. And so like straddling between that deep freeze, the woman, the child, the woman, the eternal girl waiting for the man, her Prince Charming to wake her from a deep freeze to say, you are the one I choose.
The problem is people buy fairy tales in real life based on movies and books and the PR program that's sold to them by their churches, by their cultures, by their families. And some of those fairy tales end up with totally lonely, isolated people.
It's like in the heteronormative dance, there's so many different individuals telling you how to interact with the opposite sex, telling you what is the most important thing. And it's like, historically, it's like, how do you know as the individual what to do, how to be able to organize yourself in a relationship that's healthy?